Thom, since you are literally and figuratively a student on the topic, Thom's pursuing a doctorate here at Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar. Could you kick us off and summarize the Paris Agreement and what it includes, just to set the stage for us?
Sure. Well, thanks, Dipender, and thanks to all of you for coming. It's always working for the last few years in the kind of smaller, closed rooms of negotiations. It's always refreshing to know that people outside of those closed rooms actually take an interest in some of the stuff that occurs there that obviously has broader relevance. So looking forward to the discussion today. This is I'm going to admit, is a bit of a Dorothy Dixer, which we thought might be useful, because from my view, we talk a lot about the kind of success of Paris and what was achieved, and we all bask in that and celebrate that. We heard some elements of that yesterday, and from my perspective as someone who works with a small island state, we heard the most important aspect of that yesterday, which is a new goal to attempt to limit average global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, which is the scientifically recognised upper limit for what will give us a good shot, basically, at survival amongst those small islands and other vulnerable countries. But there's also, I think, 4 or 5 other key components of what was achieved in Paris that are particularly important for the kind of broader community and will be particularly important in the kind of political debates to come. So just to, I think, very quickly summarise a number of those, and to also pretext those by saying that a lot of these were actually ideas that started amongst small islands and started amongst countries like the Marshall Islands and other vulnerable countries. And going into Paris, these were very, very much our kind of best outcome scenario. So to walk away from Paris with a number of these was something that we certainly didn't think would necessarily be the case going into Paris, going into those 2 weeks plus of negotiations. And in fact, even 48 hours before the end of it was not necessarily something we thought would necessarily all carry through right to the very end. But besides the 1.5 degree limit, which is a new limit, it's never been included in the text before in that way, there's also, for example, some very strong architectural options which over the coming decades will basically provide the opportunity, provide the framework, which is what Paris was all about. It was never going to be a one-shot deal, which will allow us to ramp up ambition over time to hopefully get to a point where we are able to limit to 1.5 degrees through exponential action. So the most important of that, I think, is the importance of having 5-year commitment periods where countries after 2020 will be required to set their new emissions reduction targets on a 5-year basis. And for a lot of the period leading up to Paris, it was uncertain whether that would be 10 or 15. But common sense will tell you that the more often a country sets a target, the better it's likely to be. The amount of advancements in technology in the years within those 5 years is often exponential, as Al Gore showed yesterday. The science is often more alarming. There's a whole range of reasons. So the 5-year commitment periods, I think, is a really big success. And then the second one that I also just wanted to very quickly shine a light on is the long-term goal. And I think that's particularly probably going to be important to the kind of conversation here today, because that's the one that's really the most significant to the investment community and probably the broader community. And that's a goal that by the second half of this century, so in 34 years' time, we want to have achieved net zero emissions in the entire world, which is a huge goal. It's probably, I would say, the strongest signal, but also the most powerful signal ever set collectively by a group of governments in history. It's an extraordinary goal when you think about it, to be able to do that, given the way that society still operates today. And that, again, was something that right until the very end was not certain would be in there, but sends a signal to investors, it sends a signal to consumers, it sends a signal to absolutely everyone in the world that the post-carbon economy has not only started, but is going to be a reality, and fossil fuels have a very limited lifespan now. So I wanted to shine a light just on those 3 things: the 1.5 degree limit, the 5-year commitment periods, and the long-term goal.